It's not been that long since Longlegs and the Monkey, but somehow Osgood Perkins is back with another movie. This one stars Tatiana Maslany as a woman who suspects something sinister is afoot during her romantic weekend getaway at a cabin. Join us for Keeper. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Tastes like shit.
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and talk about a horror movie, and today we're looking at a new release. We have Keeper, which is a film by Osgood Perkins, and if you're feeling like we've said that name a lot in the last year and a half, it's because this is the third movie that he's had come out in under a year and a half. Well, actually, maybe Longlegs was a little bit longer ago, but we didn't do it until, end of the year, start of the year. So
yeah.
It feels like this, The Monkey, and Longlegs have all been very, very close together.
And they already, have been talking about his next one, which is going to be sometime next year. I'm assuming probably more, towards like the first half or so. So
I can only assume that he had kind of like one or two of them banked, and for some reason they just weren't coming out for like a while, so it feels like they've all stacked up really close together.
I believe, I forget if it was this one or Monkey, but I think one of them, he had like a movie that kind of stopped for a little bit because of the writer's strike, and then I think they kind of went and like made this other thing while they were waiting for that or whatever. So I'm not sure if this was the one that was on hold or this one was a result of that, but I do think there was something like that going on. But I mean, even that, even if that wasn't the case though, it would still be, pretty impressive, like, to have like 3 movies, like a movie every year,
Yeah, and even for movies of their size, because obviously horror movies tend to be a bit quicker, a bit smaller than your big, tentpole studio releases. It is worth mentioning though that there was a time when this was more normal. See, if you look at directors from like previous generations, back when it was like Hitchcock and stuff like that, like he was cranking out 3 movies a year for like most of his career. That just used to be the normal thing, before there was a lot of post-production and like with FX and things like that, and I don't know, things just moved a lot quicker for whatever reason. But anyway, we will start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. And this is like any Osgood Perkins movies, kind of intentionally like vague going into it. The trailers don't tell you too much. But we'll start spoiler free. We'll give you warning before we get to spoilers. We'll you can like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch if you do. You can give us 5 stars on your podcast app. And of course, if you want to support the show, you can do that over in Patreon or via YouTube membership and get some bonuses. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yes. This one stars Tatiana Maslany, who most people will either know from Orphan Black or possibly from She-Hulk. It was maybe the more recent thing she was in that was a bit bigger. But she's very good, typically, and she's the lead role here. And she plays a woman who goes away for a weekend with her boyfriend, Malcolm, to his kind of... I feel like cabin's a little bit too... like... I guess this technically would still be called a cabin, but it's really just a house in the woods. It's a full house.
Right.
With all the furnishings that you would expect from a house.
Fancy cabin, basically.
A fancy cabin.
Yeah. It's like, for people when they want to spend some time in the woods, but it's like, well, I don't want to be like too uncomfortable,
Yeah, I still want internet access and stuff. I don't think we ever see a TV, but there's definitely a stereo. There's definitely like music equipment, so
yeah,
that may just be a choice more than anything else. But I don't know. There could be some atmosphere. I could see myself sitting watching horror movies in the woods and getting some vibes from that. Even though most nature people would probably scoff at the idea that you get out to nature just to watch movies, but
well, I mean, I've done this like a few times for friends, like at if they have like bachelor parties and they'll take like a little weekend trip to the woods, or like if it's a big birthday, and it is kind of fun. Usually what you do is you kind of do like the woodsy outdoors stuff during the day, like that's when you go on a hike or go get food or whatever, and then at night that's when you kind of cozy in and watch like some movies and stuff. So I can see the appeal of that.
yeah. But anyway, that's how the movie kicks off, and something weird, possibly supernatural, is happening, and I really don't know what else to say about it without the spoilers. So I'll just say that and leave it there. But definitely, there's something spooky happening, and like things are seen. There's a sense of dread and impending doom, and we'll just leave it there. But that's the vibe of it. So yeah, we've had an interesting journey with Osgood Perkins. I really liked his first couple of movies that we did, Black Coat's Daughter and Gretel and Hansel. You did not like those, but you were very positive on Long Legs, which I also thought was good, if not my favorite. Not my favorite of his films, but I liked it quite a bit. And The Monkey was a weird one because it was such a tonal shift compared to his other movies. It was more of a dark comedy, if anything. And it definitely had its positives, but also maybe didn't quite all come together as much in the end. So very curious getting into this one to see what the outcome would be.
Yeah, it is very interesting because I feel like we started on opposite ends of the spectrum with him, and then we kind of slowly shifted because, yeah, like you said, you didn't hate Long Legs or The Monkey or anything, but I feel like I was the one that was more positive, and then obviously I didn't really like his first two movies, so I feel like
I was still pretty positive on Long Legs. Monkey's the only one that I was like, closer to middling, although I still saw positives in it, to be fair. But yeah.
Oh yeah. I feel like you definitely didn't hate it, but I and the funny thing is I actually know like a lot of people that really didn't like that movie, The Monkey, which I get because it is very different than his other stuff, but it's silly, but I thought it was a lot of fun. And then Long Legs I was actually a really big fan of, surprisingly. But the interesting thing is, despite having quite enjoyed those last two movies, I really wasn't looking forward to seeing this. I didn't know much about it going in. I think I saw the trailer maybe like once or twice, but I did kind of get an inkling that, this was probably going to be maybe more in line with his other movies that I didn't enjoy that much. So, I mean, obviously, going in with an open mind and stuff, but for me, there wasn't as much to get me excited because, like, with Long Legs, it was like, all right, even if I don't really like this director, I love Nicolas Cage, and I hear people talk about him doing this kind of like big crazy character, so that has me excited. And then, with The Monkey, it's like, well, I love Stephen King, so obviously I'm going to be excited for an adaptation, especially of like something that hasn't been done before. So like this one didn't really have anything like that for me to really grasp onto. So yeah, it was, I guess, kind of a weird feeling going into it.
Yeah, I don't know what my expectations were. I think I liked the sound of the premise just from how it was quite vague, but like the premise basically read, before I saw it anyway, of couple go for a weekend away in a cabin, and then he first gets called away and leaves her on her own, and then something weird starts happening. Like that was kind of how it sounded. I actually don't think that's accurate now that I've seen the movie. I mean, he's not actually gone for that much of it, and it plays out in a very different way than I think that description implies, but which isn't necessarily a positive or a negative thing. It's just I guess they were just trying to be vague about what was going on, so they weren't owning up to what was actually happening.
I mean, I really don't know how you would describe this without getting too spoilery. I mean, other than just saying, couple in the woods and some stuff happens, but
yes, I know it's anyway. We'll get into it. Tim, what did you think of Keeper?
So I guess I'm kind of mixed on it. Like I honestly thought it was a bit of a frustrating watch because there's stuff in here I actually thought was really well done that I really liked, and then there's other stuff that I just didn't care for as much. And I mean, it's hard to get into specifics without spoiler stuff. Like there's stuff that I'm like legitimately like, okay, I really don't understand why like this happened or that happened or what the significance of this or that is. Um, so I guess part of the reason why I didn't really like some of Perkins' earlier stuff is he just feels like a director who is very much style over substance for me. But I mean, I do think he has like a really good style. Like his stuff always looks great. And I don't think that's an exception here. I think it's a very good looking movie. It sounds good. It's a small cast, but I really like Tatiana Maslany. I thought she did a great job. Actually didn't really like the person that played the I guess boyfriend. He was playing it kind of weird, and I don't know. I found his performance off-putting, and I guess like you can say, well, stuff that happens later in the movie kind of gives a reasoning for that, but I don't know. It still doesn't really change the fact that I didn't really like that character. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess just story wise, for a lot of times, I just kind of felt, I guess, confused and not really digging where it was going. But again, it was a pretty movie, and I guess the credit I'll give it is once we are getting more towards the end and the horror stuff is happening, I actually really dug that stuff. There's a look of certain things in the movie that I actually thought like, oh, this is really cool. I guess maybe I kind of wish I understood it a bit more. And I don't know, it'll probably be a fun discussion once we get into spoilers. Maybe you can, if you have a better grasp on some things, maybe you can let me know. So yeah, sorry to be a bit wishy-washy. Again, it's kind of hard to talk without spoiling stuff, but yeah, that's kind of, it's a little bit all over the place for me. There's some good stuff, but also some stuff that I'm just like, screw you, movie.
I love that you said spoilering stuff, not just spoiling stuff, which is the word that exists for that. You made up a whole new one, just for the occasion.
I'm kind of combining, I guess, like spoilery and spoilering, and just kind of one mishmash of words. I was just gonna say I was actually really looking forward to see what you thought about it, because I was like, again, with kind of being all over the place with some of his movies, I was like, okay, I'm wondering if this is going to be more of a return to like what you've liked about some of his earlier films. So I was so obviously I want to hear what you have to say, but yeah, I was like, oh, I wonder what Pete's going to think of this.
Yeah, I'm definitely mixed on it. I think I really liked how it started. I think it was a good little way it starts with a nice bit of style that felt like, okay, this feels very kind of focused in a sense. It's definitely not revealing what it's about very quickly, and it wants you to feel like you're putting the pieces together as you're watching it, which I don't mind per se. I think that aspect of it's fine. I do think, though, as it got into the third act, I do think the direction is fantastic. I think Perkins is very good at just framing things in a scene where nothing creepy is even happening, but it's just framed in a way, and there's just like an awkward pause between dialogue that just makes it feel kind of creepy. And that's it. There's nothing else really going on to make it feel like a horror scene. But it always, like, you never forget you're in a horror movie. It always feels like you're watching a horror movie, and it feels like a really strong sense of direction there. And I do think
very foreboding, I would say.
Yeah, and I do think some of the horror stuff does look very good. I like that quite a bit as well. I think just though the story and where it goes, and bizarrely, while I agree obviously that it does keep things very confusing intentionally up until a point, there is legitimately a section where it's just, okay, it's time to explain it now. And I thought that was where it kind of went off a cliff, because I'm like, I almost think this was more interesting when you didn't just explain it to me. Now that you've explained it to me, it feels a little bit, I don't know, like I'm not in love with where it's went with its reveal, I guess.
Actually, that's a really interesting point, because it kind of feels like there's a fine line if you're going to do something that's like weird, where, yeah, if you don't want to explain too much, but sometimes it makes it more confusing if you explain a little bit, because you're right, they do, go into some backstory and stuff. But for me, that kind of just raised more questions. It's like, okay, so I know some stuff, but now I'm like thinking about other things. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think the ending was my least favorite part. I thought the last like 10, 15 minutes, I found myself feeling kind of like, oh, I don't really like where this is went. I think it had a lot of intrigue early on, and I think it's very well directed. And obviously Tatiana Maslany is very good because she usually is. But it all kind of came to just kind of a whimper at the end. To when it actually made its final little point, and I could kind of sum up the type of story this is, which I won't just now because it would spoil things, but I could sum it up very quickly as comparing it to something else, and I think once I realized it was just going to be that, it got a lot less interesting, and I thought, oh, we've spent 100 minutes doing this. It could have been much quicker, and it'll make more sense why I said that when I compare it to something else. So sadly, I kind of came out of the end just feeling a little bit, I don't know, maybe even more negative than I should have, given my levels throughout the first, like, say, 2/3 of the movie, where I did have a feeling like things weren't, like, it kind of felt like there was lots of individual moments I liked, there was lots of direction that I liked, but there was a kind of a prevailing sense that it wasn't quite coming together. Like, you know, like some of the parts wasn't quite equaling what it should, based on all of the skill and talent and the things that I could recognize that, you know, oh, I like this scene, I like this scene, I like how he's done this moment. But the overall thing didn't feel like it was like I was engaged with the overall narrative. And then the ending kind of, I don't want to say it shit the bed per se, but it did kind of feel like I guess because it was playing things so mysterious for the majority of the movie, I guess I was kind of hoping either it would be left kind of open and ambiguous so there'd be something to theorize about, or they had something really unique and interesting. And I think the actual result at the end, other than one or two details that are a little bit like hard to understand, it's actually pretty straightforward what the movie ends up becoming. And I just don't think it ended up being that interesting. Like, it's like, oh, we spent 100 minutes doing this. We pretended like it was a secret worth keeping until like towards the end, and I just don't know if it was like, yeah, but it's just this. It's like it's basically the first thing that I thought, more or less, at the start of the movie, barring a couple of details that are kind of moved around. I don't know, a little bit weird in that sense. So sadly, I'm very lukewarm. I think the reviews are very in the middle, right? You know, it's like 50-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that sounds about right to me. Like, I wouldn't dock it too much because there's a lot of like technical craft here. There's a lot of good elements to it, but it deserves middling reviews because it ultimately never pulls together into like a whole that's satisfying.
Yeah, I agree. There's no satisfying whole to go into with this one.
Give me strength. Give me strength.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with pretty much most of what you're saying, though. Yeah, like there's some stuff that's really good about it, and then yeah, there's some stuff that is not so great. So then when you kind of put it all together, like yeah, it's just kind of this like middle of the road movie, which is a shame because the stuff that it does well, it does like really well. It's like, oh, this could have been something special, you know, if you take like some of these parts as it is. But yeah, maybe the script just needed, you know, a bit of like, you know, retuning or something to, yeah, you know, just make it go like more one way or the other. But I'm not totally negative on it. Like I definitely didn't hate it, you know, but yeah, it's just that kind of middle.
There's lots of good things in it. I just don't see me watching it again because ultimately it was unsatisfying by the end.
Sure.
I probably think this and The Monkey are probably equal for me about quality wise. However, I think this one suffers more for its failures because, well, I think The Monkey also was a little unsatisfying with its ending and like, you know what the story ultimately built to. I think The Monkey, because it was more lighthearted in a way, it can kind of function on the idea that several of the individual scenes are entertaining in a way that I don't think this can fall back on that as much, because this one relies, I think, a bit more on it all coming together, whereas The Monkey, I think, well, I still don't think it comes together quite as much at the end. the movie doesn't suffer for that failure as much as this one does. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this one has higher highs, but the points I would give to the monkey is that it's more consistent throughout. Like, even if you don't like the monkey, I think, it's like it, it is what it is. While this movie, it's kind of going more like up and down with stuff. But I also know I'm a bit of a monkey defender, though. Actually, like that one. But
yeah, always defending those monkeys.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I know you said before that you didn't hate it, but it's just it's funny to me. Like everyone else that I seem to know, like really didn't like it, except for my wife. She liked it quite a bit. So,
well, her taste has been in question for years now. Ever since she decided to marry you.
I mean, fair point. I wouldn't argue with that.
So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll get into spoilers quickly so we can start actually talking about it properly. But yeah. I mean, some cool visuals, some nice direction, but ultimately, I just don't think the script was ever going to a place that was going to be that satisfying to me. So take that for what you will, and we can get into things. So spoilers for Keeper. You have been warned. Do you know what's so funny is that there is very strong visuals in this movie, and one of the strong visuals is on the poster, which is on the poster it looks like there's a sort of blurry black like oval over her face, like something really weird and supernatural's happening. The actual context for this shot in the movie, which is a really cool shot, and then you realize what it is that it's basically the camera looking up at her with like a locket like covering the camera lens over her face, and that's what's creating the visual, rather than like the poster looks like a vortex or something's like over her face, and there's some sort of weird like, oh, like, is this going to be like there's no one in there, like she's been possessed or she's empty or something. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was like, oh, it's just like a sort of little visual trick of the cat. It's a really nice shot, but it ended up not being like this big factor in the movie like I thought it was going to be. It was just like a nice little moment, and that was it. But
I don't think I saw the poster, so I have to double check that.
Yeah, it's basically just that moment she's looking down in the water, but it's I guess right. Less obvious what's happening in the image. Anyway, I really like the opening of the movie. The openings does this thing where it's like a montage of like these POV shots looking at different women in different time periods. And it's clear that they're all the start of relationships where it's like, oh, this is like the first time this woman smiles at whoever the camera's supposed to be. And then like there's like maybe a fight as if they're in the middle of a fight in the middle of a relationship. And then we go through like maybe like 4 different women in different time periods. And then at the very end of it quickly, there's a couple of like there's a shot of each woman very quickly screaming in darkness to imply that they all ended in some sort of murder or danger. And then that's the thing when we get the title screen. And I was like, that was a very stylistic, just music playing over these visuals. It was very pretty to look at. It was very simplistic. And it gave you this sense either that something has been alive for a long time and killing various women, or it's maybe just showing this idea that the history repeats itself and all of these women basically had the same story of meeting someone, it going kind of well for a while, things breaking down, and then it turning into either murder or whatever. I mean, it's just a scream. You only get like one blink of them screaming, so it's hard to tell exactly what it's saying, but yeah, obviously it's implying a bunch of stuff with that. So I really like the opening. Arguably it may be the strongest part of the movie for me, because I thought it was a really stylistic, really focused idea of how to present the foreboding nature. Because obviously then when the movie starts and it's about this woman in a relationship and she's going to spend a weekend alone with this guy, you know, all the ideas have been put in your head of like, oh, this is going to go poorly. Not just because I'm watching a horror movie, but because that opening sequence, that opening montage set me up for the idea of relationships breaking down and ending in tragedy. So, yeah. Opening is good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. It definitely, gets you in the mood for the horror right away. I don't know if they mentioned it early on and I missed it. Because eventually they talk later about, how they had been dating for like about a year or so. But for like a lot of the beginning of the movie, like I was trying to figure out like if this was a newer relationship, or like how long had they seen each other? Do they know each other well? Just because the way like her friend is acting when they're talking on the phone and stuff, like I don't know, she made it seem like, oh, don't go away with this guy, like you barely know him or something. So I don't know. I like, to me it seemed like this was maybe like a newer relationship or something. So I was kind of surprised later on when they talked about like they've been dating for a year or whatever.
I mean, to be fair, they said that, and that first conversation with her friend on the phone, like she said, oh, it's been a year, right? And she's like, yeah, it's been 1 year.
I don't think I caught that.
Yeah, they say that right at the start. And to be fair, the friend never says "don't go away," as if like, I mean, if anything, she's just teasing her and saying, "Oh, you're going to get some this weekend," kind of thing. But the friend does crack some jokes saying, "Oh, are you sure he's not married? Are you sure you're not the side piece?" kind of thing. Maybe implying that despite the fact that they've been together for a year, it's, maybe the friends noticed that they've been together for a year, but they kind of oddly maybe don't do as many social things as a couple as she would expect her to, or whatever. Maybe she's seeing some, not warning signs per se, but like certainly is prodding some fun at her. But it's kind of just, obviously it's all foreshadowing in some sense. And it turns out to be wrong. I mean, the friend's not right. He's not married, even though there is a section later on where Liz, our main character, does think that for a minute. It's not true, though. The truth is much worse than him being married. But I guess that's like one of the things that like I think was a little bit flat for me, is that the opening certainly implied that the boyfriend in some way is the danger, right? That he is not to be trusted. And I don't know if I ever really felt like after the opening, it worked for me that I already had that feeling, because as the movie was playing out and where you're going to the cabin and it's like, hey, we're having a nice weekend, like there's some interesting choices made about how to portray these two, where they're kind of having these little romantic moments where they seem happy, but then it gets kind of cold. There's like maybe an awkward silence here or there, or there's just like a little bit of a weirdness to it where, he'll say something like, oh, he's in love with her or whatever, and it'll just feel like kind of cold and like, oh, I don't know, like, have you two been happy? Because it kind of feels like there's like a stiltiness to this where you've not quite, accepted your feelings, and maybe on some level she is kind of trying to force this relationship on herself, because maybe she feels like, oh, I'm in my mid-30s now or whatever, I need to try and make this work because, I'm going to die alone if I don't. And maybe she's trying to force it when she's not really feeling it or something. I don't know. But there was definitely an awkward vibe to it. And it was intentional. This is not a critique per se. It's just portrayed in a very interesting way where I don't think I kind of agree with part of what you were saying, which is I don't know if I ever quite get a handle on what this relationship is, outside of this weekend. Like, what is their current status in terms of like how they feel about each other?
Oh yeah, no, totally, and yeah, I agree that did feel like there was a weird awkwardness to them, which, I mean, for some people that might be a positive because it might be like, oh yeah, it's so weird, but then it makes sense later on when you find out why. But I don't know, for me, like, I still just didn't really care too much for his performance, Malcolm's performance, and then two, and it's also just like weird, like, all right, so obviously we're in spoiler territory, like, so obviously he's brought her up here to be like the sacrifice, but I don't know, he is acting so weird, and I do think there are kind of like, these like signs that something's not right, and obviously, if you're in that situation, it might not be as obvious as it is to a viewer, but I don't know if you are bringing her up here for this like specific thing, like, I don't know, I just feel like, hey man, like, maybe don't be acting like so weird and stuff, like, like you don't want to give her any like reason to pause and want to leave or anything. I don't know, like I understand the reason for the performance, but I still wouldn't say it necessarily like worked entirely on me. I
mean, I think what they're going for is that despite what he's doing, he does care about her and he's conflicted and he feels bad, and I think that's what they're trying to do. And so like none of this awkwardness that we're feeling is a failure in a set. I mean, it's a failure in the like the output, in the sense that I don't think it quite works in the end. but it's not a failure in that I think every single part of it's intentional. I don't think any of this is happening because they're making a like they've stumbled into it and they've made some stupid choice. I think this is intentionally what we were supposed to feel. I just don't know if the end result is quite right or ever was compelling, because it because I felt like it was juggling some different type of things. Like, you know, in some parts something's, you know, creepy supernatural's happening in the background. Sometimes she's seeing things and having these weird dreams. Sometimes it's kind of awkwardness from him, and it's like, is he like just going to try and kill her this weekend because he's acting kind of weird? Like, what is the actual thing? And then I think the big thing for me that, like, obviously they explain some stuff later on, and some of the visions she had kind of gets explained, and I guess to make sense of the story as we're talking about it, it's probably better to just jump to that, and then we can go back and talk about kind of how the movie plays out. So basically Malcolm and his cousin, although it might actually be his brother in reality, but he's Darren's the cousin who lives like next door. There's like 2 houses in the woods, and he's this kind of gaudy guy with a gold watch who's always kind of smirking. I actually, for a second, Joe, who I thought it was, because he looked a lot like him. He looks like a
guy from
yes.
I was thinking what's I mean, he'd be like a younger version, but he reminds me of the guy from like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
That's exactly who I was thinking of. Yes, Boyle from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
For a split second, I thought it was him, and then he said a few lines. I was like, oh no, it's not him, but he's got a very similar kind of hair and face to that dude. But he's really smarmy. He's really all these things. But anyway, so the backstory of the movie is, once it's eventually revealed, is that those two, who I think were actually brothers in reality, found a pregnant woman who looked just like Liz in the woods 200 years ago. They've been alive for a long time. And they shot at her, wounded her, and then threw her in like the sty with the pigs. And she ended up giving birth, but she didn't give birth to humans. I don't know if that's because she's some sort of witch, or because this was like a violent act and this is like resulted in something else being born. I don't know what the exact reason for that is. But these creatures were born. These creatures who had a hunger, and it's never really goes into exactly how they figured this out, but seemingly by sacrificing young women to these creatures every, say, I don't know, 30, 40 years, something like that, it kept extending their life. They keep getting to live by sacrificing people to these creatures. And that's what he's brought her up here for this weekend. He's going to sacrifice her. Now, most of that makes some sort of sense, right? And it's obviously feeding into this idea of like, oh, she's just being used, and he keeps saying things like, oh, this is a beautiful thing, this is an act of love I'm doing, and you're letting me live for another 40 years or whatever. But obviously it's this idea that he's using a woman for his own gain. He doesn't care about her, despite how much he says he is. You know, she's just a tool to his ends. So you can see the themes that it's kind of getting into. The part that I still don't quite get, to be honest, is part of the plan, and this is just one of the weird details early on that never ended up making that much sense later, is that there's a cake.
Okay, yeah, I had a lot of questions about this as well.
Yeah. So when they arrive at the cabin, there is a box with a chocolate cake in it. And he says, oh, the caretaker always leaves a cake when she goes. It's quite good. She's a better baker than she is a caretaker. And I'm like, okay, that's a weird line, but all right. And, you know, the movie plays out for a bit. They have dinner. Some other things happen. And he's like, hey, before we have sex, you need to have a slice of her cake. And then this is another moment where the relationship's clearly not been going that well, because he doesn't remember that she doesn't like chocolate. And he kind of still forces her to, like, well, not forces, maybe a bit of a strong word, but he still cuts a slice, puts it in front of her and says, go on then, and just stands there waiting. So you know something's up with this cake. You know he's up to something because he's been too insistent with the cake.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if he forgot she doesn't like chocolate or didn't know, or if he purposely
same difference.
Knew
that. Never knew, you know, or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Or pretending not to know because she needs to eat the cake. I don't know.
Well, yeah. So I wasn't sure if that was something he did on purpose, or if it was because or I'm sorry, if that was like something he did on accident, or if he did it on purpose, because they later say that you're only supposed to take a bite, you're not supposed to like eat the whole thing or eat a large amount. So I don't know if he.
Well, that's the other thing though that I was going to get to, is that's the other part of this that I think makes no sense. I don't understand this part. Is that so the plan seemed to be that she has a bite of this cake, and that's supposed to knock her out, right? Because he leaves her alone the next day. He makes up some excuse. He's a doctor or something. He's like, oh, I need to go and see a patient who's dying, blah, blah, blah. And he leaves her alone. And the idea, apparently, is that when she's alone, she will be asleep, and that these creatures will come and get her in the house and kill her. That's the sacrifice done. He doesn't have to do it himself. He just kind of leaves her there for them. But for some reason, she's still awake. And when he comes back and finds her, and she's still alive, she's still awake, and he's a little bit surprised by this. When he shows up much earlier than he was supposed to, because he clearly didn't think he had to wait that long. When he's talking it more openly later, once things are more on the table, he says, you were only supposed to have a bite of that cake. One bite will knock you out, but you had to eat the whole thing. Which actually, I kind of glossed over that part, is that she only had the slice, obviously. During the night, right, she woke up, and we get a creepy scene where she goes through the house in the dark, and she gets to the cake in the kitchen, and for some reason, she feels compelled to start shoving it into her mouth with her hand. She just starts grabbing chunks of cake and shoving it into her mouth. And this is the part where I still don't understand why she feels compelled to do it. I thought it was going to explain it later, and it never did. I still don't understand why she did this.
Is there like some supernatural reasoning where, like, I don't know if it's because she resembles the mother so much, or I don't know if they're trying to say
that's a separate thing we're going to get to, because that's a whole other branch of this.
Right. But it's part of what I'm going into though. Like, I don't know, are these spirits or demons or witches or whatever they are, like, do they want her to be the new mother, so they're compelling her to eat the whole thing or whatever, so it's not just the usual passing out or whatever? Because I mean, unless there's like some supernatural influence, I don't really understand it. Because the way she's eating it is not like the way a normal person would. And then also, she said before that she doesn't like chocolate, so yeah, why would she be going back and just eating the whole thing? It's a very strange thing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the whole thing with her resembling the mother, or their mother thing, like, yeah, that's like a whole thing, and maybe that's like some supernatural force is compelling to do this, because she does eat it like an animal. She just starts shoveling it into her face like a mad woman. But I like, that's not even the confusion here. That's a separate issue to me. The issue that I have, first of all, that I just do not understand, is why eating the whole thing suddenly makes her immune to the effects of what a couple of bites would do. Like, surely eating more of the thing that's designed to knock you out. And that was the other thing, is like, the implication is that this cake appears supernaturally, like the creatures themselves make it appear. It's not like something that, it's not something that Malcolm, the boyfriend, has baked in advance with some sedatives or something like that. It feels more like, no, it appears magically, because another one appears later in a box on the table. So why are these creatures are baking a cake? I don't know. Like, the cake part of this is so weird to me. None of it makes any sense.
Yeah, I really don't know. It is very strange. Like, if it is some like supernatural thing, fine or whatever. But I do agree. The thing that really kind of stuck in my craw is it just doesn't seem to add up. That, like, yeah, it's a thing that makes you pass out if you take a little bit, but if you take a lot, it doesn't. Like, that's just not how, like, I mean, anything works. I mean, I'm not like I guess I don't know much about like different like drugs and stuff, so maybe I could be wrong. But
maybe
I feel
maybe that's the problem. We're thinking about it as if like, oh, there's a sedative or something in there. Maybe what's actually happening is that a couple of bites, because these creatures make the cake, apparently, it like maybe connects you to them, so you can kind of sense them or see them, and that that creates like a bond that lets them into the house or whatever. But because they compel her somehow to eat the whole thing, it basically makes her so connected to them that she's seen a lot more of them, and she's more hyper aware of it or something. That's the best explanation I can possibly try and give you, but like it's such a wonky part of the movie to me. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and again, if that is the explanation, though, again, it's like, why is she compelled to eat it? Unless, again, they're the ones who are compelling her or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's like a weird thing to like get that hung up on, but I do think, yeah, it is like distracting, like, because it is, you know, important part of the movie.
I mean, it's a weird thing in the moment, right? But you kind of forget about it because you think, oh, they'll come back to that later. There'll be a reason why she felt compelled to eat the cake, blah, 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 blah. And the movie plays out and you're just going along with it. But when it comes back up later and he says the line, you're really supposed to have a couple of bites, but you have to go and eat the whole thing, as if that's what made her immune to, at least, I mean, that's what he seems to think anyway. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe that's not why that they've left her alone. Maybe they've left her alone because, yeah, she looks exactly like their mother. And is the movie implying she's a reincarnation of her, or is it just like a dumb luck thing where because she looks like their mother, they're choosing to not kill this one because they want to like help her instead of him now because she's like, you know, the mum they never had or whatever. You know, forgetting the fact that she died in childbirth and, you know, like, you know, well, when she was shot in the head after childbirth, technically by them, you know, Malcolm shot her in the head as a kid, but like they would never have seen her. But I guess that doesn't matter when we're dealing with these supernatural, you know, horror creatures. Maybe they can just sense it or something. I don't know. But yeah, so yeah, the whole cake thing's weird, and then yeah, the other, because there's like a vision she has in the middle where another character says to her, they think you're their mother, right? And that kind of sets you up for where it's going to go with that side of things as to why the creatures seem to like her. You know, and a lot of the creepy visuals of these creatures, like there's a moment where she's on the phone, like 2/3 into the movie, where you just see this head with a long neck moving up the wall in the background, and that stuff's great. Like every time it has the camera in an awkward like angle and something weird's happening in the background, or sometimes it's not even when something weird's happening. Sometimes it's just like, oh, this angle looking down the stairs at her when she's like standing there is like there's such a good composition with the shadows and like the framing where, you know, that side of stuff is great. Like he directs the hell out of every single scene.
Yeah. I think that's what definitely saves the movie for me, because yeah, all that stuff like I just thought was so well done. I love the look of these creatures. They're so like strange and creepy, and like I have no idea what they are or like what their powers or intentions are, but
the closest that I can compare them to, if you've ever watched Community, they're like the human being mascot from Community.
That's a really good comparison.
Yeah, with more budget, of course. They don't just look like a guy in a spandex suit, but yeah.
I was kind of curious if he was maybe influenced by like Japanese folklore or something, because I mean, I wouldn't know about like every one of these, but the one you're talking about with the really long neck, I know that is like a type of ghost that you see in like different like Japanese stories. So I mean, maybe it's just like a coincidence, like he maybe just thought like long necks were creepy, or maybe he was inspired by that one or whatever. But I was kind of thinking like, oh, like I wonder if he drew inspiration from that. But yeah, I mean, 10 out of 10 for those things. I loved whenever those weirdos popped up.
Yeah, the other thing that did work for me as well is the cousin, who's a bit of like a sort of showy asshole. I actually thought they nailed this idea of whenever he's around, she's just uncomfortable, and like not in a like he's dangerous way, although it kind of is to an extent, but more just in that way where you're like, oh, I really want this person to leave. I don't want him around. I want him to go. Like I thought that discomfort I thought was really well conveyed to the audience.
So I will agree with that, but maybe we can cut to the scene with them in the house, because this also kind of confused me.
Well, just before we get to that, let's start with his first scene just to sort of set up
sure.
His side of things. So he's also brought a woman for the weekend, but it's like an Eastern European woman who barely speaks English, who's like, and there's even a bit here where Liz makes fun of her when she leaves, where she's like, can we go to the club now? And she's like doing like an accent, and she's like basically saying, oh, you brought some bimbo up here, whatever. And yeah, the cousin, part of his being an asshole, he seems to like the fact that she can't speak much English. Just like, oh, not a word out of her. He seems to like that. He loves that about her.
Yeah. it is kind of funny. It's like, oh yeah, she doesn't speak a lick of English, and then like later on, she's like, oh no, she is speaking English. Like she clearly knows how to talk.
Yeah, we hear at least a few sentences from her, but we see like a scene of her on her own, like that the next morning in the woods where she's sort of running away, try to get a phone signal, and then, and again, very interesting visuals here where it seems like some creature that just looks like the tree kind of eats her behind the tree, but you don't get a good look at it, so it kind of looks like the tree came to life and like just picked her up almost. It's a really interesting visual, I thought. It looked good.
Yes, I'm not like super inclined to like, you know, watch this whole movie again whenever, you know, it comes out or streaming or whatever, but I could see myself like going back and rewatching some of these scenes because yeah, like I thought that was a cool scene, but it did happen so quick. I was kind of like, oh wait, what was that? Like that might be something kind of fun to, you know, kind of watch and pause to see exactly like, all right, what was this that, you know, did that?
I mean, they did a good job of making it kind of unsettling and like, wait, yeah, like you say, what was that? Like there's definitely that vibe, and I don't feel that a lot in movies anymore because most things tend to fit into a box that's already been created. Like, oh, that's this type of alien or this type of monster or this type of thing. You know, everything sort of fits neatly into a category because we've already established them all. But anyway, this woman shows up in like one of the visions she has in the middle, and that's the one that says, "Hey, they think you're their mother," kind of thing. But even that scene's really well done, and you know it's obviously again by this point it's well established she's seeing things that keep disappearing, but she sees her. And then she's like a second version of her who's like small, like shrunken down. Like someone is literally taken like so if you're in Photoshop and you just resize the image, but it's just like resized. So there's like two of her, but one's like half the size. And it's just like it's just really surreal, really creepy. Yeah. That type of stuff is good.
I forget about that. I actually really liked that scene a lot. And then part of me was starting to wonder if maybe if this wasn't a supernatural thing, if it was some type of like drug thing, like because I mean early on, like I thought like, oh, like he obviously like did something to the cake or drugged it or whatever, and then I don't know, part of me throughout the movie was starting to wonder like, oh, okay, was there like some hallucinogenic things, or like did she take so much that she's like overdosing and having these like visions? I think even at one point she says she feels like she's on mushrooms or something, so I was kind of wondering if the movie might be going in that direction or something. But that scene was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the reason why she's drawn to the cake is because most people like maybe like because she's like this chosen one who they like. She's like oh, I like the taste of whatever that was, because I'm assuming there's more in it than just, you know, regular chocolate cake. Like I'll give them this again. This is like points for the direction. Every time there's a shot of the cake, it's the most intimidating chocolate cake I've seen in a movie, and it's not because it's weird. Yeah. It's just a normal chocolate cake. It doesn't look like terrifying because they've done something weird with the design. It's just a circle of chocolate cake, but every time it cuts to a shot of it, it feels like, oh no, we're looking at a murder weapon or something. That's what it feels. Yeah. So the direction is really good at making you feel what you want to feel, but it just... Anyway, so when she's been left on her own, and you can tell it's an excuse for him to leave, but he's like, I need to go to the city, and again, there's all those awkward silences and pauses in between every sentence. And there's a really interesting performance bit here actually that I want to mention, where as he's telling her he needs to leave her on her own, she actually has a tear go down the side of her face, even though technically nothing emotional is happening. She's basically just saying, yeah, I'll be good here on my own to chill for the day, no big deal. But there's a tear going down the side of her face. It's almost like on some subconscious level she knows that this is some kind of trap, or at the very least... maybe this is also where she thinks maybe he's running off to go spend the day with his wife or something if he is married, and that again turns out not to be the case. But that's what the friend says when she phones her, and she's like, "Wait, he left you alone? Oh, he must be away with his wife's pussy or something like that." You know, she makes some digs. You're the side piece, Les. Don't be the side piece. You're a better woman than that. Blah blah. It's kind of interesting to me that it goes so heavy on like talking about the idea that she might be the other woman, that it's kind of funny how I don't think the actual plot of the movie, once it gets into it, feels like that thematically was ever that relevant again. Like the idea that he's using her, absolutely, but the idea that she's, I don't know, like I guess they're just sort of going for this idea that there's a falseness to it, and that's what she's recognizing. And because she's like only reading it in a normal way, a normal explanation for that might be, oh, you're not the only person in his life, you're just like, you know, someone on the side. and obviously we're in a horror movie, so there's a supernatural, murdery reason for it instead. But when she's left on her own, the cousin shows up at one point, and the cousin seems surprised that she's still there. So he clearly was expecting her to be dead by now, because that's how this usually works. And when he comes in, and he kind of, again, refuses to leave, insists on them having a drink, and there's a good little bit here where she goes to the bathroom and is basically just mouthing to herself, just go, just go. She's frustrated, and I thought it did a really good job conveying that feeling. He gets out a big butcher, cleaver, and he starts, creeping up the stairs, and I'm like, oh, he's going to try and kill her. He definitely expected her to be dead by now, and he's going to try and, finish the job, I guess, for whatever reason. And we don't even really see what happens. We just sort of cut back to a shot after we stay with her for a minute, where we just sort of see his body being dragged upside down with his head dangling off, as if something has killed him very efficiently and very brutally. And I thought that was a good shot. I was like, oh shit, these things are powerful. Whatever we're dealing with here, they are strong. They are imposing figures of some kind, because that was pretty gnarly.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm a little confused about is, yeah, so he's creeping up the stairs with this, cleaver. So yeah, obviously, I'm guessing his intention is to kill her, but I wasn't sure if they're able to kill them, or if it's the creatures that want to kill them. And then I guess I was maybe a little confused why the creatures would then kill him. I'm guessing, if they are starting to look to her as their mother, I guess maybe they're protecting her.
Yeah, I don't think that's a confusion. Yeah. I think that's clearly what this is. They have decided that they want her around and they're not going to kill her. So him posing a threat to her is them just stepping in and stopping him and be like, no, you're not killing her. I think that part's easy to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, him going after her with a cleaver, though, for a second, it did make me wonder, is this, my assumption is this has never happened before, so he's just kind of panicking and thinking, oh, should I, do some of the work for them and, leave her as an offering kind of thing? I feel like this is him just improvising rather than any kind of thing that he's thought out. I don't know. I don't think there's too much weird about this part in particular.
Yeah, I guess maybe I wasn't sure if they are able to kill them themselves, or if they have to be sacrificed, they're alive so they can suck their life force or
no, because by this point we'd already seen the scene with the other lady, his girl who get killed in the woods. So I think by this point we know that they don't have to kill them for the creatures or whatever. Now, admittedly, I get that there's some confusion to this as you're watching it, because at this point we still don't know a lot about what's going on, so you're still kind of processing what's happening here. I think with the knowledge we have later on in the movie, though, I don't think this particular part is that hard to understand. I think most of it makes a reasonable amount of sense to me. But this is kind of the big set piece in the middle. When Malcolm comes back, he's surprised she's still there. It feels kind of awkward. And the thing that kicks us into the third act is that he kind of forgets the name of his patient. And this, she reacts oh, he clearly lied about this. So she runs off to the bathroom. And there was a line earlier on about the bathroom being the only room in the house with a lock on it and no windows. So it's the only place where it feels like she's private. Everything else is windows everywhere. There's no blinds or curtains. And he basically just unlocks the door from the other side and comes in and just admits that the lock, it makes you feel better, but it doesn't actually keep anyone out. So she never really had any privacy here for real. I thought that was a nice little detail. But basically, this is where he just sort of stops pretending and says, look, I'll explain all this. Let's talk about this, blah, 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 blah. And he kind of insinuates a few things and you start to put it together. And then ultimately when he says, you're going to die, Liz, and it's because I love you that I'm choosing you for this. And this is where it flashes back and we get the full explanation of what happened with them as kids and finding this woman and ultimately killing her, but then sacrificing people to her demonic children, whatever they may be. It doesn't go into a whole lot of an explanation. Maybe there is some lore this is based on that if you happen to go researching, there's some stuff to connect all this to. But it was at this point in the movie where I went, oh, this is just going to be a Tales from the Crypt episode. This movie's going to end with them helping her and her getting comeuppance on him. And this movie's going to end with him dying. And that's exactly how the rest of it. So even though there's still definitely some weird wiggle room and exactly, okay, so why did this woman give birth to these creatures? Some of the rules about the sacrifices and how they realize this is a little bit wonky. The visuals of the creatures themselves, especially when she wakes up and because she ends up falling into the water, and when she wakes up, she's in this basement area with the creatures, and we see that they're moving around. They've got jars with heads in them and stuff like that. And then there's one with a sack on their head, which turns out to be this creature that represents all the women that have been killed already. Because all the faces of all the different women are kind of there's mouths going all the way around it. And that was a good creepy visual. I thought, oh, they put a lot of work into the design of this thing. Them all talking at the same time, but saying different things was a really creepy visual. That was good.
And then we had gotten a jump scare with her early on in the movie that I thought was pretty effective, where I feel like she just turns around or something, but the lady with the bag on her head was there, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I loved all this stuff, all the creatures, they all had distinctive looks, which I thought was cool. There was one that kind of just had this kind of smoke coming out of it, and then this other one that just had this kind of weird happy face with this weird slimy drool stuff coming out. It was all very weird and creepy and unique.
And the one with the neck, obviously, that could stretch. We see that again. Yeah, it's such a weird feeling though at this point in the movie, because it's these visuals are great, but I already kind of knew the ending wasn't working for me, because everything about the confrontation between him and her, even before she sees these things, already kind of was that was already the descent of my interest, where I'm this isn't working. I don't really care about the fact that he's brought her here to sacrifice her. This is actually a lot duller than it initially appeared to be. This is actually not that interesting, even though, again, we see these creatures afterwards, and they seem really cool, but you kind of tell at that point we're never going to get to learn anything more about them, right? She's going to basically just adopt them as their new mother, and then at the end, they're going to, kill the guy for her, and that's how the movie ends. It ends with him... whatever de-aging has happened to him, wears off. He wakes up and he's an old man, and then he wakes up again and he's dangling upside down in the woods, and she comes out and says a couple of creepy things to him, and then dangles his head into a big jar of honey, I think. Something like that, yeah. And the movie ends with him just sort of lying dead upside down, and some upbeat music starts playing, ironically, and goes to credits. So again, when I say it's a Tales from the Crypt episode, that's what the last 20 minutes felt like to me. I'm oh, if you had done this in 25 minutes, this is totally a Tales from the Crypt episode, where this guy wanted to sacrifice this woman for his own gain, and then turns out the demonic creatures that he was sacrificing her to like her better, so she turns around and gets him killed. I think that's the other thing about the movie that feels kind of rushed to me, is at the end it feels like she's just on board with this. She's Yeah, I'm their mother now. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to be the creepy gatekeeper who takes care of these creatures. And it feels like she's left all humanity behind. And I don't think the movie really set me up for her just going away from the real world like that, I don't know. It felt like it took a leap, and it wasn't really concerned with this idea of oh, she's given up her life to do this now. I don't know. I mean, maybe she'll go back to the city, because it seems like he was going back and forth whenever he wanted. So, the only thing I can say here that I kind of liked is that when she was on the phone with her friend earlier, she said, on the phone, oh, how's your cabin? And Liz said, oh, it's not mine. And the friend goes, oh, not yet. And they just sort of laugh it off as a little joke, as if they're going to get married. And then here at the end, no, it's her cabin now. She's taking it.
I didn't think about that. That's a good catch. I will say, I agree. Story wise, it's not super satisfying or as interesting as some of the other things the movie's trying to do. Again, though, I do like all the little visual touches they're doing. I did think it looked good when he's waking up and slowly starting to realize like how old he's gotten, and then it's just like a neat little trick when he's hanging upside down and having that conversation with her, and then whenever we see her, she's like upside down because we're seeing it from like his viewpoint or whatever.
And she feeds him a bit of the cake. There must be more to that cake than just knocking someone out, because I don't think they need to knock him out to,
that's
do
a
this.
good point. Yeah,
There gotta be something else going on here.
Yeah, possibly part of the sacrifice ritual or whatever. It's been a while since we've seen it. Was there like any specific cake stuff that was similar to this in like Gretel and Hansel, or I don't remember. I'm just curious. Maybe.
I mean, there's always food stuff in Gretel and Hansel, because the whole point of that story is they're hungry and this, witch offers them food. So I don't know if it was cake stuff specifically, but there was definitely food stuff going on.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe there's just a little. I mean, maybe that's just like a part of the story he liked or whatever, and kind of incorporate a little thing like that.
Maybe.
Maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah, because they do a whole thing when she's seeing the creatures, they pull like a head out the jar, which I think is supposed to be the head of their mother that they've preserved in a jar, and it kind of like, looks all weird, and they swarm around her, and she just kind of starts smiling and laughing, like almost like she's went crazy. And that's kind of, and I guess, if I'm looking at it thematically, I'm like, what's the movie doing here? Like, this idea that, like, maybe spiritually she did in a way die, but she's become like a spirit of vengeance to, like, get revenge on this man. Not that she literally died, but you could almost read her getting out of the water as, oh, this was kind of a death, and she's been reborn, kind of thing. I don't know, but it's like, like I say, I can't think of an example of a movie here like this one where the story lost me, but the visuals they were doing with their reveals towards the end were so good that I was still liking the visuals of it, even though I'd already lost interest in the story. Because normally what happens is, if once I've lost interest, like, usually everything kind of sucks at that point. It's kind of really weird and rare that I lost interest but was still finding myself be impressed with visuals. Because normally, even if they're still good visuals per se, I'm usually just kind of in a bad mood, and I'm not even taking that stuff in. So, I mean, at the very least, I guess I'm complimenting that the visuals are so goddamn strong that I was still finding myself appreciating them, even though I already kind of knew that the movie was a bit of a dud at the end.
No, it's weird, because, usually when I think a movie is bad or I don't like it, like, a lot of times it's those, shitty, like, generic, Hollywood movies that were just like, oh, like, this is so cliche and the acting's bad and it looks like shit. But this is one of those examples where it's like, you can't really say that. Like,
oh no,
there's stuff that's
all.
not working, or stuff that maybe I think is bad in the movie, but it's never, at the cost of the performance or the visual style or, like, the look and sound and everything. So yeah, it's kind of weird that while I'm like losing interest, like you're saying, you're keeping focused.
Yeah, I think the point you're getting at is that it never feels like just some phoned in, like, just schlock. Like, this is way better. Like, as much as I ultimately didn't like this that much in the end, and as much as I have problems with it, like, this is way better than, like, any, like, I don't know, Imaginary or any, like,
Right.
crappy Blumhouse movie or anything like that, where it just feels like the same schlop being served up to us in a slightly different package. This feels like, no, he cared about what he was making. He was putting in effort. There's lots of good elements here in the filmmaking. It feels like in the best of intentions and good faith to try and make something good. It just ultimately doesn't work in the end. I don't think the script's good enough or whatever, but it never feels like, oh, this is just another movie. Like, this is an interesting failure at the very least, as opposed to, something that's just got no redeeming qualities. So, take that for what you will.
Yeah, like, I don't know if people really need to, like, rush out to the theater to see it, but I do think it is interesting enough that it's worth checking out, like, when it's streaming or whatever. Like, I think, if you don't dig the story, there's at least enough, like, cool visuals and stuff there that, it's not like a hard watch or boring or anything. That like, there's something there. It's just kind of unfortunate it doesn't completely come together.
No, and it just hits 100 minutes, so it's not over long either. it doesn't commit any big sins. It just ultimately never, like, I'll go back to the phrase I used earlier. It never feels like the sum of its parts, and I think that's because the script doesn't bring them all together, and something feels a little bit off a lot of the movie as a result of that. And some of that's intentional, but some of it I don't think just works as well as maybe as it could have. But it always feels like it's because he's trying something interesting at the very least, and if it fails, it fails. But like I wasn't mad that I watched it, and I certainly,
Sure.
it doesn't make me feel any less interested in future Osgood Perkins movies. Like, I feel like, yeah, maybe his next movie won't be that like amazing, but I don't think it's like, if nothing else, I think I'm going to feel things when I watch it. I'm going to have things to say about it. I'm not going to be bored.
Yeah, well, I still wouldn't say like I necessarily love him as a filmmaker, but I would say he is probably one of the more interesting, horror voices out there, just because, like, all right, he has some movies that I hate, some that I love, and some that, like, stuff that I don't like but has interesting style. So, you're always going to get at least something that, even if you don't 100% vibe with it, there'll still be like effort and talent and something interesting, worthwhile in it. So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting guy, I guess, to say the least.
Yeah. When did IMDb like flesh out their genre bit? Because like I'm looking at the genre section on Keeper right next to the title, and it says body horror, folk horror, monster horror, psychological horror, supernatural horror, tragedy, and horror. Like, I don't remember them going into like subgenres like that before. At least in that section, anyway.
Yeah, that's way too much. Like, if you're gonna do it, I think maybe you can do like 2, like max. Like that's that feels like way too much.
Yeah, I feel like describing like 5 subgenres is bordering on spoiler talk, because you're being so specific at that point. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I wish I liked it more. And obviously we kind of didn't get into a lot of detail, into a lot of early scenes, because it's a lot of the same kind of thing. It's a lot of like her waiting around the house. There being kind of just this awkward tension in the air, this sort of like, what am I here for? And not that she thinks she's unsafe per se. She doesn't think that. I mean, I think we're thinking that because it's a horror movie, but there's just kind of this like awkward tension of like, is this a real relationship? Is this something that's going somewhere? Yeah, another couple of passes at the script, I think would have went a long way with this one, but yeah, but it's not a fruitless endeavor either. There's a lot of things in here to like, even if it doesn't come together in the end.
Yeah, I just thought of that scene. I think it's like later on when they're starting to fight or whatever. Like you mentioned, how you like the opening, and then I think it's when they're starting to have the argument or whatever, and like as she's kind of saying stuff at him, like they're kind of flashing back to the other girls. That he's like,
yeah,
whatever.
So when they were fighting with them, it's sort of like making the comparison of like, hey, this is this stage of this relationship that they had as well. Yeah.
And that was like a nice callback too, because it was like, yeah, you would hear her like screaming something, but it would be like, they'd be showing the clip of the other woman, so it's like, oh, like this conversation happens like every time, and that's nice.
Also, he has like a serial killer like trophy collection of like, he has boxes of their clothes that he smells, and he writes their names on the boxes, and he like puts his like, hey, this is Liz, everyone, and he sort of like says hello to each of them, because at one point Liz found a photo of him and one of the previous women, and it seemed like with this woman he was married and had kids, like back in like the I don't know what time period it was, but like let's say the 50s
like an
or something.
Old black and white photo.
Maybe even before the 50s, yeah. It's because he said he's been alive for 200 years, so it could have been any time. I mean, I think it's clear that the earliest is like the red-haired woman, because she looked like she was in olden times. So that feels like when he first became an adult, that's the first woman that he ended up with for a while, at least. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, feelings here are weird. The writer here, Nick Leopard, is the person who wrote the script. It wasn't Perkins who wrote the movie. I'm just curious. Oh, that's interesting. He's got one other writing credit, and that other writing credit is Dangerous Animals.
Oh, okay. Wow.
which we only just did a couple of weeks ago. So that's
Yeah.
funny that. Small world. Oh well. There you go. That's that's Keeper, I guess. Tim, what are you rating Keeper?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Even though I wouldn't, it definitely doesn't totally work. There's enough talent and stuff in there that I can't go too low. But it is kind of frustrating because the stuff that stands out as not working or that kind of frustrated me, it does bring it down quite a bit. But then, yeah, also just so much of the visual stuff and the style and the atmosphere and the performances, all that stuff is working really, really well. So kind of juggling between like 5.5, but I don't know if maybe we just want to go up to like the full 6 because, again, a lot of the stuff that worked did, I got to give credit for being pretty good. So I guess I'll give it a 6. Yeah, which is not like, too bad. Like, it's like okay, like it's I guess the strong points to it stand out enough that it reaches that level. But yeah, it's a shame that it's not really much higher than that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same range. I was debating the exact same thing, 5.5 or a 6. I definitely think it's over the halfway line because there is just such good shots and directed sequences that I can't go lower than that. But, like, it's one of those things where sometimes a 6 is, like, a really pleasant thing where I'm like, oh, this is, like, a fun, stupid little slasher movie. I'm going to give that a very enthusiastic 6, and I really like it and want to watch it again. This is a movie, though, where it's disappointing that it's only a 6. Because it has potential to be better. The direction is of a higher quality. You're wanting it to be better, and it's actually very disappointing that it's only maybe scraping a 6. But I will agree with the 6. But it's one that, because of a kind of an unsatisfying taste at the end, that I don't know if it's a 6 that I'll ever want to go back to, potentially. Which is a shame.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we saw it because, yeah, if we weren't doing another show, I probably wouldn't have felt the need to go out and see it. And like you said, I'm not really compelled to watch it again anytime soon, but I'm definitely glad I at least saw it the one time. Like it was interesting enough that I don't regret seeing it, but yeah.
Yeah. Also, this is one of those movies that have like 7 studio logos at the start.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, another one. Oh, another one. Because it did the Black Bear one, did Neon, which are the 2 main ones, and it's like, oh, and then there's this other company. And then this other company. Like, all right, I get it. Movies are hard to fund. You have to have, 8 companies investing in it, I guess, these days. But yes, there you go. That is Keeper, the new Osgood Perkins film. Next time on the show, which we already recorded the next couple episodes, so next time we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing Critters 4, which is the Critters movie in space. So if that sounds like fun, you're welcome. If it doesn't, we're sorry. But we've got a couple of sequels over the next couple of weeks before we get into the Christmassy stuff after that, because we've got a few Christmas episodes planned for that time period, and then we'll take it from there. But yes, obviously, if you enjoyed the show, do give us the like on the YouTube, give us 5 stars on your podcast app, all that stuff. If you want to support the show, you can do that over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or via YouTube membership, and get access to the back catalogue of bonus episodes. There'll be another one around Christmas time, where just, silly movies that we'll review separately that would never make it on the main show as an episode usually. And we do have a silly Christmas one planned. Well, we have a silly vote for a Christmas episode for a bonus episode for December. So yes, there's a voting tier, of course, as that implies. There's also even more streams where we talk about different horror topics, which you get most weeks. They're going to be a little bit later for the rest of the year, as we're just sort of like getting ahead for the Christmas season and whatnot. But look forward to those. Some of those can be quite good. We usually do a big year preview, even more streams in January, so we'll no doubt do that again once we hit the start of the year. So you can look forward to that as well. But anyway, go support everything and check out the other shows and whatnot. It's worth mentioning that over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of movies that have been out because other than Keeper, I saw Begonia, Predator, Badlands, and The Running Man all in the last 3 weeks. So those have all been reviewed on the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast, the Atomic Cinema Experiment. So if you want to get thoughts on any of those, go check those out. Variety of feelings on those, so go have a look. But that's us. That's the show. That's Keeper. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.